I had great trouble. I think that they were horrified that I was going to take this on. I didn't really belong there. I have to say, they could not have been meaner.
How did a film that started as a simple Star Trek parody end up becoming a beloved classic with fans and critics alike? There are battles, stories, and secrets that only the cast knew that lie beneath the jokes and action. Find out what most fans didn't know about Galaxy Quest, from Sigourney Weaver's fight to keep her character's heart to the problems that made it more than just a comedy. Are you ready to start? Let's go! The making of Galaxy Quest. Galaxy Quest is now a well-liked cult classic, but it wasn't always going to be so popular. In fact, the movie had to fight to even be made before it came out in theaters. The studios at first turned down the story because it was too niche. The script was a clever parody of Star Trek and the world of sci-fi fans. The movie had inside jokes and references to sci-fi, which made the big companies not want to make it. They were afraid that most people wouldn't get the jokes or enjoy the tribute to the genre. And let's be honest, a comedy that made fun of something as specific as Star Trek wasn't exactly seen as a surefire hit. While the companies were making Galaxy Quest, they forgot that it was more than just an imitation. It wasn't just making fun of sci-fi, it was a celebration of it. The story for the movie was a great mix of sharp satire and real love for the genre it was making fun of. The humor didn't make fun of the fans or the people who made the show. Instead, it was a love letter to the very things that make sci-fi so interesting. The silly things that happen, the friendships, the big ideas, and the strong emotional bonds that fans form with their favorite characters. The company didn't see that at first, though. They missed the point of the story because they were focused on how to sell it to as many people as possible. Sigourney Weaver, on the other hand, saw right away how great the writing was. Galaxy Quest wasn't just a silly comedy for her, it was a look at how artists, fans of scenes, and the shows that become important to them all connect. She understood that the story was more than just a spoof of Star Trek, and that it had a unique message. The movie was a comment on actors who are defined by a part they played, and how their characters still have value even when they are in ridiculous situations. Weaver's ideas were very important in getting the movie made. She fought to keep the script honest, and even though the studio wasn't sure about the project yet, she believed in its promise. That was more than just jokes and pop culture references. It was about a real person story. She was sure that Galaxy Quest could connect with people on a level that went beyond the genre, and she worked hard to keep the film's heart alive, even when the studio was trying to make it more mainstream. The turning point was when Tim Allen joined the group. At the time, Allen was riding high on the success of Home Improvement, and the studio saw him as a big draw for the general public. They thought that the movie would have a chance of doing well since his name was on it. Allen's participation changed everything. He knew the same things that Weaver did about the subject. He knew Galaxy Quest wasn't just another geek comedy. It was a story that loved sci-fi fans and laughed at how silly the genre could be. Even though the company thought the movie was just a geek comedy, Allen thought the script could go beyond that genre. He agreed to work on the movie because he thought it had the potential to be great. His choice to be part of it was very important in making the movie happen. It helped the studio see that Galaxy Quest really did have the ability to reach a wider audience, even though they were worried about how niche the script was. It was even more important that Allen played the part of Jason Nesmith with sincerity. Nesmith is a former TV star who has to face his past and become the hero he played on TV. Allen's acting was a big part of why the movie worked, both as a comedy and as a story of redemption and growth. Jason Nesmith's character arc was believable and easy to relate to because of his timing, charisma, and skill at finding the right mix between humor and heart. Coming up in the next part, we'll talk about the important moments that made the movie famous. This journey was far from over. From Sigourney Weaver's important fight for Gwen's character arc, to Galaxy Quest's ongoing impact on sci-fi movies and fans. Sigourney Weaver's fight for the heart of the film Galaxy Quest was more than just a comedy. It was a clever mix of humor, love for sci-fi, and tributes to the genre. It almost didn't happen, but one of the most important parts of the movie did. The famous scene from Chompers that has slamming pistons and a dangerous machine mouth trying to snap the characters up was almost cut. Why? DreamWorks didn't like it because they thought it was too silly, too wild, and didn't fit with the movie's tone. That was not going to happen, though, Sigourney Weaver. It wasn't just slapstick fun when her character Gwen DeMarco had a full-on meltdown in that scene. It was a moment of pure, healing self-awareness. Gwen wasn't the only actress who was upset about her part. Weaver and all the other actresses who have ever felt limited by what Hollywood expects of them were also upset. It was a break from the silly stuff that showed how hard it is for Gwen to be more than just the hot girl in a sci-fi show. What Weaver did in this scene wasn't just play her part. She fought for her character and all the women who had been left out of the genre in the past. DreamWorks didn't get it, though. The company thought it was way too much. They didn't get that this wasn't just another stupid joke, but a turning point in the emotional depth of the movie. Weaver knew that, so she worked hard to make sure it stayed in the movie. She knew the line wasn't just a funny reaction. It was Gwen as a character telling the audience how she really felt about being pigeonholed and lowered to a shallow level. There was more than one thing that made Gwen angry. She was mad at the system that put her in that situation. Not only did they want to keep one line, they also wanted to make sure the movie stayed true to the feelings of actors, especially women, who felt trapped by their parts in sci-fi or action movies. Weaver didn't just fight for one scene for her character's speech. She fought for the story to show the real struggles of actresses who have felt ignored in an industry controlled by men. One of the most real and human parts of the movie was when the character broke down and pulled away from the expectations and ridiculousness of the situation. Gwen was in a tough spot, and Galaxy Quest was also going through a big change. It didn't just make fun of the genre. Instead, it praised it. People who played these parts, their fans, and the genre's lasting effect on pop culture were all honored. The main idea of the movie, which was about the human side of science fiction, was shown in this scene. It wasn't just about space fights and aliens, it was also about the people who played those parts and the fans who kept the stories going. There was more for Weaver to do than just one scene. She saw the whole movie as a chance to speak out for women in the business, especially in sci-fi, which is often attacked for making female characters seem like nothing more than props. Gwen DeMarco wasn't just another stereotype. She was a woman working in a field where people didn't always take her seriously. Sigourney Weaver knew that letting Gwen's anger be heard was more than just a plot point. It was about being honest. She wasn't going to let Galaxy Quest hide the truth from her. It wasn't just a joke movie about Star Trek or its fans. Enjoy the unique style of the genre and look into what it means to be a part of something bigger than yourself, even if that something can be annoying or limit you. Weaver could see right away what the story was really about. It wasn't enough to laugh at how silly space operas were. People also laughed with them and loved their place in pop culture. But Galaxy Quest wasn't just funny because it was a spoof. It was also touching because it was real. When the cast worked hard to bring these characters to life in ways that weren't in the story, it felt sincere. Weaver knew that the movie about Gwen DeMarco had to show more than just the chaos and humor on the outside. It had to show the fight of every actress who has ever been unhappy with the parts they were given. "I have one job on this lousy ship" wasn't just a funny line. It was Gwen's way of saying who she was. It wasn't just a side role for her. She was important, and Weaver really felt that because she had also dealt with being a typecast person. But what made Galaxy Quest stand out was how well all of these different parts worked together. Not only was it about laughing at how silly the genre was, it was also about showing respect for it. It wasn't just a joke about Star Trek. It was a way to honor the fans and the actors who had become forever linked to these parts. Not only were they making fun of how silly some of these shows were, but they were also recognizing how much they meant to people. Weaver worked hard to make sure the movie wasn't just another forgettable spoof, because he loved it so much. She knew that the story was great, because it could be both loving and harsh, and that it had heart without giving up humor. And because of that, Galaxy Quest wasn't just a funny movie. It was also sad, tragic, and sometimes very deep. But the film was great for more than just its criticism and humor. In fact, what made Galaxy Quest so great was seeing how the personalities changed, especially Tim Allen's Jason Nesmith. The actor, who was well past his prime, had to change from a cocky, self-centered jerk to a real leader who could step up when it counted most. This change wasn't just caused by story points, it was also caused by the cast's real-life problems. They had to find their own growth moments in a movie that was as much about them as it was about their characters. Keep watching, because what happened next changed everything for these characters. And it might change everything you thought you knew about Galaxy Quest. The unique challenge of parodying sci-fi, Galaxy Quest was more than just a joke. Walking the line between love and satire, fun and heart, was like walking a tightrope. It seemed like a funny look at the world of sci-fi fans at first, but there was a lot more to it than that. The group, led by Sigourney Weaver, had to make a movie that understood and appreciated science fiction without making fun of it in a mean way. They did it without blaming anyone. They just enjoyed the silly parts of the genre while still honoring its roots. Sci-fi shows like Star Trek have had devoted fans for a long time. But while it's easy to make fun of the over-the-top tech talk or over-the-top heroics, Galaxy Quest found a way to make those things cute. The stars didn't just make fun of the type of movies they liked. It was clear to them that they got it. The question? How do you make a parody of a sci-fi show without making fun of the fans who watch these shows all the time? Gwen DeMarco, played by Sigourney Weaver, was the perfect example of this battle. Not only did she get the joke, she was the joke at first. That actress had been stuck in a part that made her the token female in a sci-fi show. But when real danger comes to the Galaxy Quest team, she finds her voice. This is how she represents the movie's main idea. Sci-fi fans may laugh at the corny lines and silly technology, but they love it for the same reasons. The actors weren't the only ones who knew how important this balance was. Dean Parisot, who directed the movie, knew right away that it had to balance a lot of different things. It would lose its heart if it made fun of the genre too much. It would lose its edge, though, if it played everything straight. Parisot worked with Weaver, Allen, Rickman, and the rest of the group to make sure the humor never got too sharp. They knew that even though parody is funny, people could tell if it was done out of love, or even worse, out of spite. They didn't do this as a joke, but as a love letter to everything that was great about sci-fi. The silly spaceship with broken technology, the constant fights with over-the-top bad guys, and the dramatic speeches were all treated with the same care as any serious sci-fi movie. This wasn't just a joke about bad writing or weird story turns. It was about accepting those things and saying, "This is why we love sci-fi so much." The more you look into it, the more you learn that the movie is full of inside jokes that sci-fi fans will enjoy. The broken technology, the awkward pauses, and the strange tropes were all meant to honor a category that has never been perfect, but has always been important. Sigourney Weaver was the only one who really knew this. It wasn't just a job for her. It was a character who had learned that being a part of something silly doesn't always make it less important. It makes it seem more real. Respect for Star Trek and the sci-fi genre as a whole wasn't just for the references or small nods to the genre. It was for the message the movie sent. It was never meant to make fun of fans for liking something so out there. Instead, it was a party to honor what made their love so special. That's what made Galaxy Quest different from other fan-made games. It wasn't trying to be mean. It wasn't trying to make fun of how silly it was. Instead, it asked, why is this so silly? Why do we love these crazy TV shows? What does it mean to live in that world? Galaxy Quest does something that a lot of other sci-fi doesn't. It pokes fun at the genre without putting it down. It accepts how silly things can be while still recognizing the deep link fans have with these made-up worlds. Respect is at the heart of the movie and is a big part of why it's such a great movie. The production challenges. It wasn't just about making a cool future-set spaceship when they built a spaceship for Galaxy Quest. A lot more important than that was that it had to be both a spoof and a real sci-fi ship. The NSCA Protector, the made-up ship at the center of the movie, wasn't just a background for the action scenes. It was an important character in its own right. At the same time, it had to be funny and silly, like real sci-fi spaceships, while also making fun of the shows that inspired it. And the design team did a great job. It wasn't as easy as it looked to make it work on the screen, though. The NSC Protector looked like something from Star Trek at first glance. It was sleek and made of metal, and the control screens looked like they were made to last 1,000 years. But you saw something off when you looked more closely. The ship's appearance wasn't just a matter of taste. It was planned. There was something slightly off every time the crew engaged with it. The blinking lights, the broken control screens, and the sudden random system failures that would throw the crew for a loop. It wasn't just a joke. It was a mirror of how all sci-fi fans feel when they watch their favorite shows and think, that wouldn't work in real life. It wasn't just a joke that the ship kept breaking down. It was a smart comment on the silly things fans love and hate about the genre. Sci-fi fans, especially those who can't get enough of shows like Star Trek, are very familiar with technology that only works when it fits with the story. Whether it's a control panel that sometimes sparks or an always accessible self-destruct button, these are the little things that fans make fun of, but really love, because they're so important to the genre. People who watched Galaxy Quest really got into that. They built a ship that was supposed to look and feel modern, but also made people think of all the bad technology they've seen in their favorite sci-fi shows. This is clear from what Sigourney Weaver said about the ship and how it was built. The NSCA Protector wasn't just a set for her, it was a character in its own right. She thought that the ship's broken technology was a way to connect with the sci-fi fans who knew what was going on. As soon as the players got on the ship, it wasn't just to play a part. It was to embrace the trope that everyone loved. The players and the ship had to feel real, even though they were making fun of the genre they came from. Also, don't forget the technical difficulties that came with making the NSCA Protector set. The ship had to be big enough to fit all the complicated shots, but it still felt a bit crowded and uncomfortable. In the end, this wasn't a sleek, cutting-edge spaceship. It was an old, low-budget leftover from a failed sci-fi show. That had to be exactly how the ship looked. The set had to feel like it could fall apart at any moment, Weaver said. Fans had spent years watching their favorite spaceships in other shows, only to see them get blown up, taken out of service, or stop working every other episode. That made it more relevant to them. It was more than just a joke that the ship's old technology would make people laugh. Fans liked it because it was like real sci-fi tropes. Those messy, ridiculous parts of stories that we accept because we want to believe them. The bugs, the random weirdness, and even the controls that were hard to understand were all there to honor the genre, not make fun of it. Weaver really cared about her character's mental journey in Galaxy Quest, and she also knew what the NSEA Protector meant. She saw the ship's flaws as a reflection of the crew members' problems. People who played parts in big, important events in the past, just like the ship. Their ship, on the other hand, was a metaphor for their own fading glory. The technology that seemed cutting edge at the time was no longer cutting edge. Like their fight to keep their show alive, it was a reflection of their own battles to become relevant again. But even with all of its flaws and problems, the ship, like the actors, was still trying to keep it together. There were some problems, but it was still good enough to be called a hero. The production team was aware that they needed to be careful with these technological issues. The ship wasn't just a joke. It had to be important to the story. It was important that every bug felt like it belonged in the world they were making, not like it was just a joke. The goal was to make a ship that fans would know and enjoy, even if they found it funny. When the players joined, they weren't just pretending to be in a failing sci-fi show. They were actually living in a world where realistic and fake things were mixed together. As a parody of the Enterprise, the NSEA Protector was both funny and realistic. It felt like a real spaceship, right down to its technology flaws and oddities. That's why it worked so well. Suppose a group of actors stuck in an old sci-fi show are thrown into a real-life space journey. What would happen? What changes do you think this group of failed stars will go through when they learn their made-up roles meant something? The real test of their bravery starts in the next part of their journey, which they didn't expect to have to face. Stay with us until the biggest surprise of all. These actors find out that the most exciting trip of their lives might not be on the screen, but in real life. How did they go from pretending to be heroes to really being them? Keep watching to find out. More than just comic relief. When they were first shown in Galaxy Quest, the Theurians were more than just weird beings who thought the Galaxy Quest crew were real heroes. They made the movie better than just funny. What these good, loyal people stood for was something much deeper. The purity of fans. Fans have experienced what it's like to love something so much that it becomes a part of who they are. Not just a story or the world it's set in. The Theurians were the best model of that kind of loyalty because they always believed in the actors who played the parts in Galaxy Quest. Individuals on Galaxy Quest not only revered them, but also had faith in them. They believed in something bigger than the parts they played. They believed in the magic, hope, and motivation that fans can bring to the world. Sigourney Weaver's view of the Theurians shows how deep this is on the inside. They put in a lot of work to make these aliens more than just a funny side story. Like the best kind of fan love, they had to be real and honest. The Theurians didn't believe in stories, so they thought the Galaxy Quest crew was real and that they were saving the world by taking on impossible missions. Many people didn't think of the stars as actors. They thought of them as characters they had seen for years. That showed me how stories can change people's lives. Fans saw the Theurians as more than just an extreme example of fandom. They showed us why we love made-up worlds and people so much, even though we know they're not real. When they played the Theurians, Weaver and her co-stars had to find a way to be both funny and serious. Not only did the Theurians have to be awfully funny, they also had to be real. Weaver knew more than anyone else in the cast that these aliens had to stand for something important. They had to do more than just make people laugh. They had to make them think, too. They really cared about the Galaxy Quest group, which is a big deal for fans. Fans really feel connected to the stories and characters they adore. One thing that sets fans apart is the emotional connection. It's not just about having fun. It's about being linked. The Theurians had wide-open eyes and a strong belief in the heroes. They showed the raw feeling and devotion that makes fandoms what they are. The group changes when they learn to see the Theurians as real people with real fears, hopes, and dreams. Now, they're not just pretending to be heroes. They learn that their parts are important to someone, even if they are silly or corny. Fans often have a big aha moment when they realize that the things they've loved for a long time, like the characters they've watched through all of their stories, aren't just fun. They're also inspiring and give people hope. After giving it some thought, Weaver saw that the Theurians' loyalty showed him something important about people. She said, "These fans are us. What we do makes them happy. They don't understand what's wrong. They see the good guys." That was a deep lesson in and of itself. Not only was it a joke about the genre, what it was trying to do was show how fandom takes the stories we love and makes them more real and important. The Theurians reminded us that being a fan isn't just about doing what everyone else does. It's about finding meaning in the things that are important to us. Seeing how deeply the Theurians felt was just one thing that Galaxy Quest left behind. When seen through the eyes of these totally loyal aliens, the movie turned into a love letter to fans everywhere. It wasn't just about Star Trek or any other sci-fi show. It was about all fans and anyone who has ever felt deeply linked to a made-up world. It praised that link, that magic, and how fandom can make communities feel as real and important as any family. After Galaxy Quest found its fans and became a cult classic, there were rumors of a new game in the mid-2010s. The old group was back, the scripts were done, and the Theurians were ready to come back. Sad to say, everything changed when Alan Rickman died. Due to the grief over his death, the cast and team decided to put the reboot on hold. He played Dr. Lazarus so well that the movie would not have had a heart. Sigourney Weaver, Tim Allen, and the rest of the group all agreed that it would not be the same without him. His death wasn't just a personal loss. It also had a huge impact on the history of Galaxy Quest in ways that no one could have imagined. If you enjoyed the deep look into Galaxy Quest, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Click on the next video popping up on your screen to continue the adventure and uncover more movie secrets.